Hey everyone, there is a new Knives Out film from Rian Johnson. And before it hits streaming, Netflix has actually decided to give it a short theatrical run. This seems to be a new thing that Netflix is doing. They did it with Frankenstein, and now they're doing it again with Wake Up Dead Man. I have to say, though, it is kind of a smart move, especially when they have a movie with enough name recognition to bring people into the theater. The big question is whether the story is actually cinema worthy. That's what you need to know to decide if this is a movie worth paying for when it comes to paying for a full theater ticket when it's going to be on Netflix pretty soon. So let's get into that. While you're here, please do give this review a thumbs up and subscribe for more because it truly does make a difference with YouTube's algorithm. And you'll also make my day. Thank you so much, you guys. All right, so I should also mention that for Knives Out fans, this film does follow the established pattern of the franchise by giving us a completely new mystery, a completely new cast of characters, and a completely new setting. The only returning character is Benoit Blanc, which stays true to the anthology structure that Rian Johnson has built for this particular series. Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery, brings Benoit Blanc to this small parish where Monsignor Wicks has been murdered. The most obvious suspect is the junior Monsignor, Father Judd, who recently joined the parish. The problem is that the way the murder was committed makes it almost impossible for the murder to actually have happened at all. Every clue and every piece of the crime scene raises more questions than answers. Benoit arrives in town and immediately gets to work on the case. He interviews every lively, aggravating, charming, and mischievous or suspicious parishioner, trying to pin down whether divine intervention was involved or whether someone pulled off an incredibly tricky murder. The film lays out this really tight web of connections, motives, spiritual dilemmas, personal struggles, and small town secrets. It is a smart setup, I gotta say, and it's got lots of ins and outs, and it creates a surprisingly interesting mystery. One thing that Knives Out fans are going to appreciate here is that the film does something very different with this setting. The franchise usually leans into wealth and satire and dysfunctional family dynamics, but this film, it brings all of its tension into a religious community, which allows it to cut so much more deeply across multiple sections of society. It gives the story this kind of intimate, morally complicated playground of sorts, which then becomes this fresh and unexpected space for Benoit Blanc's investigation to take place. I really love a good mystery. I love a great whodunit. I love clues. I love putting things together. I grew up reading Agatha Christie, so I'm always a bit of a sucker for these kinds of films. I've not always loved every Knives Out film. I didn't like the last one so much, but that's okay. I think sometimes these things can get a little repetitive, and other times they hit on topics and themes that just kind of let them pull the story through all of its loops and contortions in really satisfying ways. There were so many moments in this film in Wake Up Dead Man when I thought I knew exactly who the murderer was and what was happening. Then something would twist, something would change. And then I'd think, okay, all right, maybe that's not the guy. Maybe this is the guy. Maybe this is the person. Then the story would twist and turn again. Sometimes my guesses stayed the same and sometimes they changed. Although in the back of my brain, I still had this feeling of like, kind of know where this film is going, but it seems like it's trying to divert away from that or lead to that in different moments. And the story just kept pulling together just enough twists to stay interesting while also giving the characters enough room to breathe. For fans of the franchise, this film really stays faithful to Johnson's traditional structure, which I know people really, really like. There is a midpoint twist that really reshapes your understanding of what you just saw, followed by a series of reveals that keep reframing the truth until the very end of the film. This is exactly the kind of storytelling that Knives Out fans expect, and the film delivers very cleanly, but perhaps not always in the ways you'd expect it to come together. In true Knives Out style, the characters all feel like real people, even though they obviously represent specific character types within the film. A few are likable, a few are definitely not, and the balance actually works. Daniel Craig does a great job again bringing back Benoit Blanc. I really enjoyed his smooth style and that wonderfully quirky accent of his. It felt like he was having fun again. And I think that's what made it for me. It felt like he was having fun. Maybe it was the subject matter because the religious angle of the film actually reveals a little more of Benoit as a person instead of him only leaning on the film as the master detective. Whatever the reason, it all worked. It all worked for me. He brings out a clever and compassionate version of Benoit mixed with this wry sense of humor that he just pulls out of his hat and lands perfectly, especially during those big monologues that he does. There is one moment at the end that just really stands out as a highlight for me because there is literally a spotlight on him in this moment as he kind of pulls together the mystery of the film while tapping into this emotional undercurrent that was set in motion by Father Judd. It's one of those signature Rian Johnson scenes where Benoit is at the center of the story and he's orchestrating this whirlwind of clues as everything comes and locks into place. And then there's Father Judd, played by Josh O'Connor. He feels like a priest who has lived a hard life. He carries a difficult past and still he found peace with God. There are a couple of scenes where he channels something deeply authentic and spiritual, and it gives the character so much weight. The movie is not highly religious, even though it takes place almost entirely on or inside church grounds. What it does really well is to show the difference between faith as a structure and faith as a lived experience. Father Judd represents the positive side of that struggle, and O'Connor does a beautiful job of walking the line between humility and suspicion. Father Judd also represents the moral center of this story. If Knives Out was about old money privilege and Glass Onion was about tech billionaires and performative activism, then Wake Up Dead Man looks inward at the nature of our human souls. It shows how good people get corrupted and how they can get controlled and how the bitter desire for wealth can take root even in the most sacred of spaces. Father Judd becomes Johnson's quiet reminder that maybe there is hope for us yet, which gives the film a deeper emotional dimension, which I wasn't actually expecting. Monsignor Wicks is played by Josh Brolin, who really is in everything right now. Like he really is. But he is such a good character actor that he pulls it off. He is the older, burnt out priest whose life has taken a really hard turn. And he just keeps going because he doesn't have anything else. He's got nothing else going. You feel like you have seen men like this, exhausted and hardened by the weight they carry. His dynamic with the younger Monsignor is one of the strongest relationships in the film. And then there are the parishioners. Every character is looking for the truth, for faith, for hope, for redemption. They're looking for something. Every one of them is vulnerable to the story Monsignor Wicks has been telling. Father Judd challenges that story, and his presence cracks open the corruption, the dependency, and the illusions, holding everyone and everything together. That is what sets the murder in motion. And that's what gives this film its emotional spine. Kerry Washington plays Vera, the attorney, who is both sympathetic and infuriating, while her adopted son, Cy, played by Daryl McCormick, leans into his role of being this failed politician and wannabe YouTube influencer in constant search of a viral moment. And it's also this classic indictment of modern self promotion that fits perfectly with Rian Johnson's wit and style. Filling out the cast is the alcoholic doctor, played by Jeremy Renner, the jaded science fiction writer, played by Andrew Scott, and the suffering musician, played by Kaylee Spaney. Finishing off the core cast is the rock of the parish, Martha Delacroix, played by Glenn Close. And man, is she good in this movie. It is a cast of A-listers who are not just here to collect a paycheck. They do the work. They bring together so many comedic and absurd moments that explore the darker side of human nature and the corruption of holy spaces. It's fascinating. Still, the film never loses its sense of playfulness, with the characters embracing their sharp edges while also revealing just enough of their soft, tender honesty. I mean, you really get that softer side of them. And that's what makes this story feel a bit more tangible and morally grounded than the other films. I think that's why it just kind of resonated with me. The setting is intimate and pastoral without any cinematic spectacle to dazzle us and fill in for good storytelling. The story is there. The story does all of the heavy lifting. As a result, the mystery stands on its own. The film works because it engages your mind, making you think creatively as you try to solve the puzzle right alongside Benoit. What I appreciated most about the film is that while the structure is kind of formulaic for a mystery, it knows that the audience is smart and that they've probably got a really good sense of who the killer is at an early point in the film. So it knowingly switches things up, landing you in places that you may have expected, sure, but the way you get there is a little bit different than what you might have anticipated. The mystery itself is this two-part puzzle. The first part sets up the impossible murder and keeps the question alive for almost the entire film. In a way that kind of gets a little old, but there's just enough other mystery and clues coming through that it still keeps you thinking, keeps you relevant. The second part of the mystery is the key that unlocks the first part. And the way Benoit gathers the clues, uncovers hidden motives, and then comes and pieces it all together feels earned in all of the right moments, even when some of them feel kind of like givens within the story. He still finds them in ways that make them feel right. There are also themes within the story that come directly from Father Judd's spiritual choices and the way he approaches the truth, which gives the final solution a much deeper, much more dramatic breakthrough rather than that razzle dazzle reveal at the end. And I actually really enjoyed that part of it. I think that might be another layer to why I enjoyed this film so much more than the last one. So, is Wake Up Dead Man worth a theater ticket or should you wait for Netflix? That's the real question here because you're going to get it on streaming soon enough. I paid the full theater ticket price for my ticket. I have Netflix. I could have waited. And I liked the first film in the series, but I didn't really like the second one as much. So I went into Wake Up Dead Man hoping that I wasn't going to be disappointed, hoping that it wasn't a waste of my time and money. And when I stepped outside into that cold night after the movie ended, the thing that stuck with me is I actually felt good. I actually felt better leaving the theater than when I arrived. I felt like I had an experience. And really, that is my number one tell for if a film is worth the price of a theater ticket or not. Wake Up Dead Man is not the best mystery I have ever seen, but it resonated with our world today in so many different ways and our search for something more meaningful in the absurdity of this modern life. I mean, I gotta say, while it wasn't the best mystery, it was still really good. However, if you want to wait for it on streaming, I think it's also worth the price of your Netflix subscription for the month. So it's definitely worth the money. It was a great film for friends and family, and I think it'd probably be a great date night film too, because it gives you something to talk about after the movie ends. And that kind of makes it that much more meaningful. If you like murder mysteries, enjoy a little comedy mixed with drama, and love the feeling of solving a puzzle right before the characters get to it, I think you'll actually enjoy the film. It entertained me, and that was exactly what I needed. That's what I wanted. If you want nonstop action, car chases, explosions, or surprise endings that knock you flat, this might not be that movie for you. It's enjoyable, but it's definitely more of a thinker's film. So, Wake Up Dead Man, have you seen it? Are you planning to see it in the theater? Are you going to wait for streaming? How do you feel about this new distribution format that Netflix is trying out? I think the theater window is a little too short, but I love the option of going to the movies if I want to see that movie in a cinematic setting. I kind of like that myself. Curious to know what you think. Because you know what? I didn't like the second film. And if it weren't in the theater, I don't know that I would have watched it on Netflix either. But the fact that it was playing at the local theater here, just 2 blocks from my house, and I like to support my local theater whenever I can, I decided to go check it out just to see what it was all about. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it and would love to know what you thought of it. All right, so that's it for me. Thank you guys so much. And please do remember to give this review a thumbs up and subscribe for more. And let me know if you found this helpful. And hey, while you're here, why not check out one of these other reviews? All right, thank you guys so much. I will see you all again soon. In the meantime, happy viewing. Bye for now.